Hey there, you're looking kind of cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out all my other socials. Enjoy. It was late in the afternoon at the nail salon. Sunlight came through the window. The open sign shined in the cool air. Joshua thought his chair was too soft. It felt like it was pulling him in. He tried to relax, but he just felt out of place with all the pink around him. "Just relax," his sister said sharply. She looked up from her phone at him. She stared at him over her red nails. She had picked the beetle's blood nail polish. She worried she might smudge her nails. "Relax. It's just an eyebrow shaping. Maybe a little wax on that caterpillar you call an upper lip." She finally glanced at him, a smirk playing at her glossy lips. "Trust me, you'll thank me later." Before he could protest further, a woman in a pristine white uniform appeared in the doorway. "Joshua, we're ready for you." The treatment room was smaller than he'd expected, dominated by a reclining chair that looked more like a dentist's setup than anything else. The esthetician, a woman with sleek black hair pulled into a tight bun, gestured for him to sit. "First time?" Her voice carried a hint of amusement as she tilted the chair back. "Is it that obvious? Most men look like they're heading to the electric chair their first visit." She laughed, a warm sound that eased some of his tension. "Don't worry, I'll be gentle." The waxing hurt more than he'd anticipated. Each strip felt like fire against his skin, but the esthetician worked quickly, her movements precise and practiced. Between applications, she studied his face with an artist's eye. "You have excellent bone structure," she remarked, smoothing a soothing gel over his newly bare skin. "High cheekbones, strong jaw, but not too masculine, very symmetrical." "Thanks?" Joshua wasn't sure how to respond to that. "I'm serious. With the right contouring, you could model." She stepped back to admire her work. "There, take a look." The mirror she handed him revealed a face he recognized but didn't quite know. His eyebrows, once thick and unruly, now formed elegant arches that somehow made his eyes appear larger, more expressive. The smooth skin above his lip made his mouth look different, softer. "Told you," his sister said when he emerged, her satisfaction evident. "You look refined, distinguished. I look weird. You look good. Different, but good." She looped her arm through his. "Come on, let's get that lunch. My treat." The restaurant buzzed with conversation, silverware clinking against plates. Joshua caught his reflection in the window and found himself touching his newly shaped brows. The change was subtle, but undeniable. "Stop that," his sister chided. "You'll smudge the gel." "It just feels strange." "Everything feels strange the first time." She paused, considering. "You know, I have this friend who does makeup consultations. Just for fun. You should let her practice on you." "Absolutely not." "Why not? You already took the first step. Might as well see the full picture." "Because I'm not—" He stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. "Not what? Not curious?" Her knowing smile made him uncomfortable. "I saw how you looked at yourself in that mirror. You were intrigued." The conversation haunted him through dinner, through the drive home, through the evening news. That night, he stood in his bathroom, studying his reflection under the harsh fluorescent light. The esthetician's words echoed: excellent bone structure, right contouring, model. His sister had left a bag of products at his apartment last week, samples from some subscription box she'd grown tired of. He'd shoved it under the sink, forgotten until now. Inside, tubes and compacts nestled in tissue paper like expensive candies. The foundation felt strange on his fingertips, cool and slightly sticky. He dabbed it on his cheek, blending the way he'd seen his sister do countless times. The color was close enough to his skin tone that it didn't look obvious, just smoother, better. One thing led to another. The concealer under his eyes erased the dark circles from too many late nights. The bronzer, applied with a fluffy brush he found in the bag, carved shadows that sharpened his features. When he reached for the lipstick, a muted rose color, his hand trembled. The woman in the mirror was a stranger. No, not quite a stranger. She was him, but transformed, refined in ways that went beyond shaped eyebrows and smooth skin. She was beautiful in an understated way, natural but enhanced. His sister's closet had always been a source of borrowing, hoodies, scarves, the occasional jacket when his were all dirty. She kept clothes at his place for emergencies, stuffed in the hall closet. Among them hung a black slip dress, simple and elegant, that she'd worn to a gallery opening last month. The fabric whispered against his skin as he pulled it on. It fit differently than he'd expected, loose in some places, tight in others, but not badly. The hemline hit just above his knees, and the thin straps left his shoulders bare. He'd never noticed how broad they were until now. Back at the mirror, the transformation was complete. The person staring back wasn't Joshua anymore. She was someone new, someone who moved differently, stood differently. Her brown hair, usually pushed back carelessly, now framed her face in soft waves. When she smiled, tentatively, experimentally, it reached her eyes in a way Joshua's smile rarely did. The sound of his phone buzzing shattered the moment. His sister's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, just checking you got home okay. You seemed quiet at dinner." "I'm fine." His voice sounded wrong, too deep for the reflection in the mirror. "You sure? You can talk to me, about anything." "I know, I'm good, just tired." "Okay. Love you, weirdo." "Love you too." After hanging up, he couldn't bring himself to change immediately. Instead, he moved through his apartment, adjusting to the unfamiliar sensation of the dress swishing around his legs. In the living room, he put on music, something slow and jazzy that seemed to match this new mood. She swayed to the rhythm, watching her shadow on the wall. The silhouette was graceful, feminine, nothing like Joshua's usual slouch. When the song ended, another began, and another. Time blurred until the sky outside had shifted from black to the deep blue of pre-dawn. The makeup came off reluctantly, each swipe of the remover erasing a piece of the transformation. The dress went back on its hanger, hidden among his sister's other clothes. But the feeling lingered, that sense of rightness, of finding something that had always existed just beneath the surface. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of mirrors and transformations. When morning arrived, Joshua stared at the ceiling, knowing something fundamental had shifted. The eyebrows were still shaped, still elegant. They were a reminder, a question mark, a beginning. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister. "Brunch? My treat again? And maybe some shopping after? You need new clothes anyway." He typed back, "Sure, but I picked the stores." "Deal. See you at noon." The shower water was too hot, but he didn't adjust it. Steam fogged the mirror, obscuring his reflection. When he wiped it clear, the face looking back still had those refined features, that suggestion of something more. He touched his smooth upper lip, remembering the esthetician's compliment. His closet seemed suddenly limited. Jeans and t-shirts, hoodies and sneakers. Nothing that matched the person he'd glimpsed last night. He settled on his best-fitting jeans and a black button-down, but even that felt like a costume now, just a different kind than the dress had been. The restaurant his sister chose was new, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs. She was already seated when he arrived, scrolling through her phone with one hand while the other wrapped around a mimosa. "You're early," he said, sliding into the opposite booth. "You're late, but I'll forgive you because you actually dressed nicely for once." She set her phone aside, studying him. "The eyebrows look good. I told you they would." "Yeah, well, no, really. It's a good look for you. Polished." She flagged down a server. "2 more mimosas, please." "It's barely noon." "It's brunch. Day drinking is socially acceptable." She waited until the server left before leaning forward. "So, want to tell me why you were so weird yesterday?" "I wasn't weird." "You were definitely weird. Quiet weird, which is the worst kind." The mimosas arrived, and she pushed one toward him. "Come on. What's going on in that head of yours?" He took a sip, buying time. The champagne bubbles tickled his nose. "The esthetician said I had good bone structure." "And?" "And nothing. It was just unexpected." "Unexpected that you're attractive? Please, I've been telling you that for years. You just hide it under terrible fashion choices and that perpetual slouch." Thanks for the pep talk. I'm serious. She reached across the table, tilting his chin up. Look at me. Really look. Her eyes were the same brown as his, but she'd learned to emphasize them with liner and shadow. Her face was his face, rearranged slightly, softened by different hormones and life choices. They'd always looked alike, but now he saw it differently. We could be twins, she said softly, if you wanted. The words hung between them, loaded with possibility. He pulled back, reaching for his mimosa again. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. She sat back, crossing her arms. I found my emergency dress in your closet this morning when I stopped by to grab my charger. The one you borrowed. Heat flooded his face. I can explain. You don't need to. I'm not mad. I'm just... She paused, choosing her words carefully. I want you to know it's okay. Whatever you're figuring out, it's okay? I was just curious. Curious is fine. Curious is good, even. She smiled. So, still want to go shopping? Because I know this great place that has amazing dresses on sale. I said I picked the stores. You did. So pick. The challenge in her voice made him straighten. Fine, but we're starting with normal clothes. Define normal. You know what I mean. I really don't. But her grin suggested otherwise. They spent the afternoon wandering through shops, his sister offering commentary on everything from color theory to fabric choice. At first, he stuck to the men's sections, but she kept wandering off, returning with items that blurred the lines. This is unisex, she'd say, holding up a flowing cardigan. Or, these jeans would fit you perfectly, showing him a pair from the women's clearance rack. By the third store, his resistance was wearing thin. The clothes she suggested weren't obviously feminine, just better fitted, more thoughtfully designed than his usual choices. When she held up a burgundy sweater with a subtle V-neck, he found himself nodding. Try it on. The fitting rooms are over there. The sweater fit like it had been tailored for him. Soft cashmere that clung in all the right places, the color bringing out warm undertones in his skin he'd never noticed. When he emerged from the fitting room, his sister whistled. Now that's what I'm talking about. You look amazing. It's just a sweater. It's never just a sweater. Fashion is about expressing who you are. She circled him, adjusting the hem. Or who you want to be. And who do you think I want to be? I think you're still figuring that out. And that's perfectly fine. She met his eyes in the mirror. But whoever she is, she has excellent taste. The pronoun hung in the air. He didn't correct it. They bought the sweater, along with several other pieces that walked the line between masculine and feminine. As they headed to the next store, his sister linked their arms again. One more stop. Trust me on this. The boutique she led him to was small, tucked between a coffee shop and a vintage bookstore. The window display featured mannequins in elegant dresses and sophisticated separates. He hesitated at the door. We don't have to go in, she said quietly. But I think you want to. She was right. He did want to, had wanted to since the moment he'd seen his reflection in that black slip dress. With a deep breath, he pushed open the door. The sales associate greeted them warmly, not batting an eye when his sister explained they were shopping for both of them. The racks held treasures, silk blouses that shimmered in the light, skirts that moved like water, dresses in every cut and color imaginable. This would look incredible on you, his sister said, holding up a deep green dress with 3/4 sleeves. I can't. Can't or won't? What's the difference? One is about ability, the other is about fear. She pressed the hanger into his hands. Just try it. That's all I'm asking. The fitting room felt like a confessional. He hung the dress on the hook and stared at it, heart pounding. It was one thing to experiment alone in his apartment, another entirely to do this in public, with his sister waiting outside. But the dress called to him. The fabric was soft between his fingers, the color rich and inviting. Before he could talk himself out of it, he stripped down and pulled it on. The fit was better than the slip dress had been. This one had been designed for a body like his, broader shoulders, narrower hips, but in a way that flattered rather than emphasized those differences. The green brought out flecks of gold in his brown eyes he'd never noticed before. How's it going in there? His sister's voice carried through the door. He turned, watching the skirt swirl around his legs. I think you need to see this. When he stepped out, her face lit up. Oh my God, you look beautiful. Don't. Don't what? Tell the truth? She pulled him toward the three-way mirror. Look at yourself. Really look. The person in the mirror was stunning. The dress transformed everything, posture, expression, even the way the light caught his features. His brown hair, which he'd always worn short and practical, suddenly seemed to have potential. With the right cut, the right style. We're buying it, his sister announced. I can't wear this anywhere. You're wearing it right now. She met his eyes in the mirror. And you look happier than I've seen you in years. She was right about that too. Despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, he felt a lightness he couldn't explain, like taking off shoes that had always been half a size too small. They bought the dress along with a few other pieces he couldn't resist. The sales associate wrapped everything in tissue paper, treating the purchases with a reverence that made him feel less like he was doing something shameful and more like he was investing in something important. Back at his apartment, his sister helped him hang everything in his closet. The new clothes looked out of place among his usual wardrobe, like visitors from another life. So what now? He asked. Now you figure out what this means for you. She pulled him into a hug. And know that I'm here for whatever you need. Always. After she left, he stood in his bedroom, staring at the green dress. It hung there like a question, like a door he'd opened but hadn't yet walked through. The afternoon was fading into evening, golden light slanting through his windows. He thought about identity, about the boxes people put themselves in and the ones they were put in by others. All his life, he'd been Joshua, brother, son, friend. But last night, for those few hours, he'd been someone else, someone who moved through the world differently, who smiled more readily, who felt comfortable in her own skin. The makeup from his sister's bag still sat on his bathroom counter. This time, he took his time with the application, remembering tutorials he'd watched over her shoulder, techniques he'd absorbed without realizing. Foundation, concealer, a touch of bronzer, subtle eyeshadow that made his eyes look larger. That same rose lipstick that had started it all. The green dress slipped on easier the second time. He'd bought shoes too, simple black flats that his sister had insisted were essential. They changed his height, his walk, the way he carried himself through space. When the transformation was complete, he stood before his full-length mirror and tried to reconcile the two versions of himself. Joshua was still there, underneath it all, but so was this other person, this woman who'd been waiting just beneath the surface. Daniela, he said aloud, testing the name. It had come to him suddenly, fully formed. Not Joshua anymore, not when she looked like this. Daniela. The name fit like the dress did, perfectly, as if it had always been hers. She spent the evening getting to know herself. The way Daniela held a wine glass differently than Joshua did. How she sat with her legs crossed, back straight, chin up. The way her laugh sounded lighter, less restrained. She put on music and danced alone in her living room, reveling in the swish of fabric, the freedom of movement. When her phone rang, she almost didn't answer, but it was her sister, and ignoring her would only lead to more questions. Hey, she said, then cleared her throat. Her voice was still too deep, but she was working on that. Just checking in. How are you doing? Daniela caught her reflection in the window. I'm good, really good. Yeah? You sound different. Happier. I think I am. Good. You deserve to be happy. A pause. So, have you thought about next steps? What do you mean? I mean, this is clearly more than just trying on clothes, which is completely fine, by the way, but maybe you should talk to someone. A professional who can help you figure things out. I don't need therapy. Not therapy. Well, maybe therapy too, but I meant someone who specializes in gender stuff. Gender stuff. You know what I mean? Daniela did know. The word had been circling her thoughts all day, scary in its implications. Transgender? Was that what this was? Or was she just a man who liked wearing dresses? Did it matter what label she used? I'll think about it, she said finally. That's all I ask. Oh, and there's this support group that meets. I said I'll think about it. Okay, I'll back off. But I'm here when you're ready to talk. After they hung up, Daniela returned to the mirror. The woman looking back seemed more real now, more solid. Not just a costume or an experiment, but a possibility, a future. She thought about work, about friends, about all the complications that would come with embracing this part of herself. It would be easier to pack the dress away, to go back to being Joshua full-time. Safer. But safety had never made her happy. And happiness, real, genuine happiness, felt too precious to abandon now that she'd found it. The next few weeks passed in a blur of small changes. Daniela emerged more frequently, usually in the evenings when the risk of running into neighbors was low. She practiced her voice, watching videos and doing exercises until she could find a pitch that felt natural. She learned about makeup through trial and error, each attempt bringing her closer to the image in her mind. Her sister became her greatest ally, offering advice and encouragement without pushing too hard. They went shopping together, building a wardrobe that could transition from day to night, casual to professional. Nothing too flashy or obvious. Daniela's style was understated elegance, classic pieces in rich colors that complemented her coloring. "You need to do something about your hair," her sister said one evening, running her fingers through Daniela's brown locks. "It's getting longer, but it needs shape." "I can't go to a salon like this." "Why not? Plenty of them are trans-friendly. I can recommend someone." "I'm not trans." Her sister raised an eyebrow. "Okay, what are you then?" It was a question Daniela had been avoiding. The labels felt too big, too permanent. But as she sat there in her favorite dress, a navy blue shift that made her feel powerful, she realized the answer was simpler than she'd thought. "I'm me," she said. "Daniela, that's all I know right now." "That's enough," her sister said softly. "That's more than enough." The salon appointment was terrifying. Daniela had practiced her voice for hours, chosen her most passable outfit, applied her makeup with extra care. But walking through those doors felt like stepping off a cliff. The stylist, recommended by her sister, didn't miss a beat. "Daniela, right on time. I'm Marcus. Let's talk about what you're looking for." He was kind without being condescending, professional without making her feel like a curiosity. They discussed length, layers, styles that would work with her face shape. When he suggested adding subtle highlights to bring out the natural warmth in her brown hair, she agreed. 3 hours later, she emerged transformed. The cut was feminine without being overly styled, falling just past her shoulders in soft waves. The highlights caught the light, adding dimension and movement. For the first time, her outside matched her inside. "You look stunning," Marcus said, turning her chair so she could see every angle. "This really suits you." Daniela couldn't stop touching her hair, marveling at how different it made her feel. More real, more herself. That night, she called her sister. "I want to go out." "Out where?" "Anywhere. Dinner, drinks, I don't care. I want to be in the world. As me." "I know just the place." The restaurant her sister chose was quietly upscale, the kind of place where people minded their own business. Daniela wore her green dress with a black cardigan, her new hair styled carefully. Her hands shook as she applied her lipstick one last time in the car. "You've got this," her sister said. "Just breathe." Walking in felt like her first steps all over again. Every eye seemed to track her movement. Every whisper seemed to be about her. But as they were seated and the waiter took their drink orders without a second glance, she began to relax. "See?" her sister said. "Just two sisters having dinner." The word hit differently now. Sisters. Not brother and sister, but sisters. Daniela rolled it around in her mind, testing its fit. "Is that what we are?" "Isn't it?" Her sister reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "You've always been my sister. You just needed time to figure it out." Tears threatened Daniela's carefully applied mascara. She blinked them back, squeezing back. "Thank you, for everything." That's what sisters do. They talked through dinner about everything and nothing. Work, movies, gossip about mutual friends. Normal conversation, but made extraordinary by the context. For the first time in her life, Daniela felt like she was participating as herself rather than performing a role. As they waited for dessert, her sister brought up the future. "So what's the plan? Are you going to start living as Daniela full-time?" "I don't know. Maybe. It's complicated." "Everything worth doing is complicated." "What about work? What about mom and dad?" "One step at a time. Work has anti-discrimination policies, and mom and dad, they'll need time, but they love you. That won't change." "You don't know that." "I know them, and I know you." She paused as the waiter set down their shared tiramisu. "You're happier as Daniela. Anyone who loves you will want you to be happy." It sounded simple when she put it like that, but Daniela knew the reality would be messier, harder. There would be lost relationships, difficult conversations, moments of doubt. The path ahead was uncertain and frightening, but going back was no longer an option. Joshua felt like a costume now, an ill-fitting disguise she'd worn for too long. Daniela was who she was meant to be, who she'd always been underneath the expectations and fear. "Okay," she said finally. "One step at a time." They finished dessert and paid the check, stepping out into the cool night air. The city bustled around them, full of people living their own complicated lives. Daniela felt part of it now in a way she never had before. "Want to grab a drink?" her sister asked. "I know this great little wine bar." "Actually," Daniela took a breath, "I think I want to go home. Process all this." "Of course. But hey, I'm proud of you." This took serious courage. They hugged on the sidewalk, and Daniela felt the truth of those words. It had taken courage, more than she'd known she possessed. But the reward, this feeling of alignment, of truth, was worth every moment of fear. Back in her apartment, she hung up her dress carefully, removed her makeup slowly. But she didn't change into Joshua's pajamas. Instead, she pulled on a soft nightgown she'd bought on one of their shopping trips, cream-colored silk that felt like a whisper against her skin. In bed, she thought about the evening, how natural it had felt to move through the world as Daniela. How right. There were still obstacles ahead, still challenges to face. But for the first time, she felt equipped to face them. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "Same time next week? There's this new Thai place I've been dying to try." Daniela smiled, typing back, "It's a date." She set the phone aside and closed her eyes. Brown hair fanned across the pillow. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions. But tonight, she was exactly who she was meant to be. The weeks turned into months. Daniela grew more confident, more herself with each passing day. She came out to close friends first, gratified by their support. Work was harder, requiring meetings with HR and carefully worded emails. But her colleagues, for the most part, adapted quickly to her new name and pronouns. Her parents took longer. There were tears, difficult conversations, moments when she wondered if they'd ever understand. But love won out, as her sister had predicted. They stumbled over pronouns and mourned the son they thought they'd lost. But they were trying. That was what mattered. The medical side of transition came later. Hormones that softened her features and redistributed her weight. Laser treatments that removed the shadow of beard she'd always hated. Each change brought her closer to the woman she saw in her mind's eye. But the biggest changes were internal. The constant anxiety that had plagued Joshua faded. The depression that had seemed like a permanent companion lifted. Daniela laughed more, smiled more, engaged with the world in ways that had always felt impossible before. "You're like a completely different person," a friend told her over coffee. "No," Daniela corrected, stirring her latte. "I'm exactly the same person. I'm just not hiding anymore." Her style evolved as her confidence grew. The dresses remained. She'd never give up that green dress that started it all, but she experimented with different looks. Professional suits for work that made her feel powerful. Casual jeans and blouses for weekends. Always put together, always intentional. Her brown hair grew longer, past her shoulders now. She'd kept the highlights Marcus suggested, and they caught the light when she moved. Sometimes she still couldn't believe it was hers, this hair she'd dreamed of for so long. Life wasn't perfect, There were still bad days, still moments of misgendering or casual cruelty from strangers, but the good far outweighed the bad. She had her sister, her friends, her slowly adapting family. She had herself fully realized for the first time. One evening, almost a year after that first experiment with makeup and her sister's black dress, Daniela stood before her mirror again. This time she wore a cocktail dress in midnight blue, her makeup flawless, her hair styled in loose curls. She was meeting friends for a birthday celebration. Her birthday, the first one she'd celebrate as herself. The woman in the mirror smiled back at her, confident and whole. Not a costume or an experiment, but simply Daniela. The journey from Joshua to here had been longer and harder than she could have imagined, but she wouldn't change a moment of it. Her phone buzzed. Her sister, of course. "Car's here! Get your gorgeous self down here!" Daniela grabbed her purse, a small clutch that matched her shoes, and headed for the door. The night stretched ahead, full of possibility. She stepped into it gladly, brown hair catching the light, finally free to be exactly who she'd always been. The elevator carried her down to the lobby, where her sister waited in a red dress that turned heads. They linked arms automatically, a gesture that had become second nature. "Ready for your big night?" her sister asked. "I've been ready my whole life," Daniela replied. "I just didn't know it." They stepped out into the city together, two sisters against the world. The night air was warm, carrying the scent of blooming flowers from a nearby park. Music drifted from open windows, the city's soundtrack playing just for them. The restaurant was packed with friends, all there to celebrate Daniela's birthday. They cheered when she walked in, raising glasses in a toast to new beginnings. She moved through the crowd, accepting hugs and compliments, feeling the love that surrounded her. "Speech!" someone called out, and others took up the chant. Daniela laughed, raising her hands for quiet. "I'm not much for speeches," she began, her voice clear and confident. "But I want to thank all of you for being here, for accepting me, for seeing me as I really am." She caught her sister's eye across the room, saw the pride shining there. "This past year has been a journey of discovery, of finding the courage to be myself, and I couldn't have done it without each and every one of you." She raised her glass. "So here's to truth, to authenticity, to the family we choose and the lives we build." "To Daniela," the crowd roared, and she felt the name wrap around her like an embrace. The party lasted late into the night. There was dancing, laughter, embarrassing stories from college that took on new meaning now. Through it all, Daniela felt a completeness she'd never experienced as Joshua. This was what life was supposed to feel like: full, rich, authentic. When the evening finally wound down, she and her sister shared a cab home. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights blur past the windows. "Thank you," Daniela said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me before I could see myself. For that appointment at the salon. For everything." Her sister took her hand. "I always knew you were in there. You just needed a little push." "A little push? You practically shoved me off a cliff. And look how well you learned to fly." They both laughed, the sound filling the cab. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror, smiling at their obvious joy. Back at her apartment, Daniela kicked off her heels and padded to her bedroom in bare feet. The closet that had once held only Joshua's limited wardrobe now burst with color and possibility. Each piece told a story: the green dress that started it all, the suit she'd worn to her first day at work as herself, the gown she'd bought for next month's charity gala. She changed into her silk nightgown, removed her makeup with practiced ease, brushed out her brown hair until it shone. In the bathroom mirror, her reflection showed a woman at peace with herself. The journey wasn't over. Transition was an ongoing process, not a destination, but she was exactly where she needed to be. Her phone showed a string of messages from the evening, photos, thank yous, plans for future gatherings. She scrolled through them with a smile, already looking forward to the next adventure.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.